I think it's important to bear in mind when you're selling to Fortune 500 companies or you're selling to companies that, are regulated to ensure that the data that they pass on to other vendors is secure. You better be prepared for a lengthy sales process, extreme due diligence, where you've got teams of penetration testers and you've got the IT teams testing your product at a hardcore level. And did you experience that? And do you have advice to startups that are trying to sell to large Fortune 500s when it comes to how to comply with all the security and data aspects?
Yes. So we have certain experts in our group who just work with all these largest clients, and of course I show at all the major meetings, but we have a certain IT team who just work on these issues, and they have day-to-day conversations about security, and they try to come up with every possible situation that we can encounter in the future and ways to fix it in advance. So these negotiations, they take a lot of time. They take a lot of efforts and energy, to be honest. And sometimes it can be 6 months. It can be 9 months. Depending on how our internal processes in this organization work. Sometimes, as I mentioned, it can take from 1 day to a year to onboard a new client, depending on the level of security.
Did you have to add anyone to your team full time? Is that what's required when you're selling to large Fortune 500 companies? Because I'll tell you what, many startups forget about the cost of onboarding a client and are simply not prepared. And this is why I personally think there are many ways to build a startup, and you can go for the head and you can go for the biggest whales to start with. It's much safer to prototype and to test with much smaller clients. So you can build the processes so that when you get your one chance with a large company, you look the part, you're familiar with their processes, you're not startled when they send you documentation and you don't even know how to review it. And God forbid, you sign it and you don't know what you're signing.
Yeah, you don't want to be put in that situation. So when we started, when we just launched our app, we only had cloud-based solution, meaning that we used Amazon, servers in order to store the data. And later, in 5 months, we developed a new enterprise version that most of our enterprise clients use. Again, depending on the size. And then they can also implement our system into their own system. Let's say they already have an app for their own employees, so they can take our Fresh Connect solution and integrate it into their own existing software, which none of our competitors also have. They have technical possibilities to do this. So we have different approach to different clients. We have cloud-based solution for startups and mid-sized companies. We have enterprise solution whenever you store all the data on your own servers. And if your companies that have over 100,000 employees, and some of them, are those big? In this case, you probably already have some sort of an app, and you can just implement our solution into your existing HR system or.
Elena, do you tend to find that not only do you have to comply with the security requirements of large companies, these large companies have technical teams internally, and they don't want another dashboard. They don't want to create another software system for employees to log into. They want API access. And they want integrations with their current systems, whether that's integrations into Slack or Salesforce or whatever it may be. Has that rung true to you as you've been targeting larger companies?
Yeah, so we already have all the kind of key integrations with pretty much everything that you mentioned. Also, there are certain HR, Active Directory, for example, certain HR systems. And usually they're even more important to our clients than integrating with Slack. Slack is kind of comes second, or even fifth. But the most important systems that we need to be able to integrate, always Google Calendar or Outlook, whatever you use. Then the next would be your HR system. It is Exchange or Active Directory or whatever it is. But yeah, of course, we already have these built-in integrations. And then depending, again, if you maybe have your own unique system, it might take us a while to find a way how we can integrate with your system. And it can be challenging, but it's also fun to work with.
So, Elena, for any entrepreneurs taking notes, let's try to summarize here for them. When you're selling to a large company, and help me fill in the gaps here, first, be prepared for extreme due diligence, both on the legal side and also on the IT security side. Be prepared for penetration testers, be prepared for lots of tricky questions, and that process can take anywhere from a day, beyond. In fact, it can take months and months to schedule, but it usually is a day or two, right, of extreme testing is what I've experienced with startups I'm involved with. The next layer would be prepared for lots of legal documentation. Make sure you have attorneys. Make sure you can, you're reasonable and you know how to work with these larger companies. Then customer support and account management. Like large companies want a lot of, some are easier than others to work with, but assume you're going to need support staff. Do you agree with that? And when we say support staff, where do you think it is? Is it account management or is it technical?
It's both. So you need to have account managers in place. You also need to have customer experience managers in place. In our case, we also provide 24/7 customer support to all of our clients in different time zones, which is also important because sometimes let's say you're like a Coca-Cola, but you have offices pretty much everywhere in the world. You need to make sure that if something is not working, they will have some number to call to. Doesn't matter, where they are. So in our case, of course, we provide everything to our clients. It's also important that while working with large corporations, you need to be not just you need to be squeaky clean. For example, we make sure that every employee, every subcontractor, they have very strict NDA agreements, and we also have really incredibly strict NDA agreements with our clients. We can only mention certain clients that were, I'm extremely glad that we can mention their names. But yeah, the rest of them, they're, I can't even talk to them.
Right, so that's another thing. People think, I'm going to get a good case study out of this, and at the very, very last moment, you realize you're under an NDA and you're prohibited to even mention them or allude to who they are, right? So that's something startups should be wary of, and it's hard to know from the start. The other thing we talked about here was the data storage and whether it's cloud versus on their own servers. You're seeing a trend or sort of a law here where larger companies want to store things on their own servers, right? Okay,
it's also possible. If they have their own cloud, it's also possible.
Great. Then we're also talking about the visualization of this data. Sometimes they want it through their own dashboards or their own systems, so API access. And then you also mentioned the software integrations needed. Could you run through again the list of software integrations for the benefit of some listeners?
First of all, you need to make sure that you have integration with Google or Outlook. It's kind of like, that's
the basic requirement.
That's the basic requirement. Then the next one, you need to make sure that you have integrations with HR systems, such as Active Directory or Exchange. And there are also some others that, like depending on whatever you prefer to use. And then you can think about like implementing something else, as you mentioned, Slack or Salesforce or HubSpot.
Fantastic.
Actually, Salesforce was the first company that signed LOI with us when we only had our first prototype. So I remember I was so happy that we got them as our prospective client. The second company that signed LOI with us was Johnson & LaSalle, which is one of the key key players on the real estate market. Right now, we work with 3 out of 4 biggest, big 4 real estate companies in the world, and soon we'll sign an agreement with the last one, with the 4th one. So I couldn't be more excited about it.
Yeah, the last thing, the last thing about selling to a large company. And this is obviously something you should expect, but it's not a law like we have some rules that we've just discussed. Payment collection can be quite tricky. Large companies are very good at financial engineering where, they collect cash, but they don't want to pay out cash. So they have a larger, working capital draw. And look, this is very real. If a company doesn't manage their working capital, they could have risk of bankruptcy or liquidity because, cash is king. When I ran my own startup, we were profitable for a while, but we weren't collecting cash and we almost ran out. Numerous companies in the advertising industry, a different industry entirely to PropTech, work as follows, where you pay your publishers, people that show ads, you pay them on a net 30 basis. But your advertisers, when you're the middleman, pay you on a net 90, and that net 90 can sometimes be net 120, which means you might be having to pay people every 30 days, but you're not collecting the money for 4 months. People would go and raise entire financing rounds just to cover their working capital needs, even though the business is growing well. Have you experienced any cash collection, not issues, but patterns when it comes to working with large companies?
I would say that I encountered way bigger problems in my furniture company rather than in Fresh Connect. Simply because Fresh Connect, it's incredibly cheap. It's only $12,500, which is nothing for a large corporation. They can definitely afford it, and it doesn't have to go through any, you don't need to negotiate it.
Right. So hold on, just to pause you there. I think this is a very critical thing you just mentioned. Know your company's sort of internal limits. Sometimes there are approval limits internally, and if a certain transaction is going to go above a certain price, you might need managerial or even CFO or board level approval. Do you agree with that?
Yes, I definitely agree with that. So the way we chose our pricing strategy, that it has to be so cheap that it's literally a no-brainer to start using our system if you like it. So you can start by using our system in one of your locations. You can onboard 20 desks and just see if you like it or not. And you can go from there. Let's say you can onboard 100 desks and then 200 desks, and you can just add new desks by adding new devices. Each of them costs $35, which is also not that expensive for a company. We are, as I mentioned, 20 times cheaper than our competitors. And you can onboard as many desks or as little as possible. Most of our clients, they have a hybrid model, meaning that some of their employees will have fixed desks where they don't need any devices, and some of them will have employees that will continue working remotely full-time. But most of their employees, they will work, let's say, 2 days from the office, 3 days from home, or they will work from home and they will only come back to the office, let's say, for client meetings or training, some presentations. So by implementing this hybrid style of work, you also, first of all, you save a lot of money, and second of all, you don't need to onboard, you don't need to use Fresh Connect on every all of your offices immediately. You can start by just creating some sort of a co-working space within your office space and try it out there and go from there. So that's how it works with large corporations. We start small and we add new locations. So let's say we start with one location here in Boston, and then we go to New York, Chicago, Austin, San Francisco with the same company.
Right, and sort of the message there is these large Fortune 500 companies, when you sell to one internal department and you win that department over, you've got an internal champion, it can be a springboard to landing more contracts internally. You also need to sometimes become an approved vendor, and you have to meet this qualification. But once you're in as a preferred vendor or supplier, it's far, far easier, and often you can use those Fortune 500 relationships to build new products and expand, as you said in your case, expanding to the different regional locations that the offices are present in, and also different departments, and eventually get portfolio-wide adoption, which is the dream. If you're powering the entire operations of a 100,000 plus employee company, it has to start with a small pilot in a department, and you've got to claw your way all the way to the top. But it's far easier once you're in. Getting into a large Fortune 500 company clearly is the hardest step, and opening that door. Just make sure, the conclusion is, make sure before you knock on that door, you're ready to walk through it. And there's a lot of things people don't think through before they walk through the door. Elena, thank you so much for... Great, thank you so much. If anyone's listening to this and you think someone could benefit from these tips, please do share. Whether you're on Spotify, Google, or even on YouTube, please do send this across. There was a lot of valuable goldmine tips here from Elena. And Elena, how can our viewers reach you if they ever want to get in contact?
So they can add me on LinkedIn, Elena Beloshapkova. They can also find me on Facebook, Instagram, and other social media. And I would be excited to schedule a Zoom call with you wherever you are. And you can also check our website, which is freshconnect.app. For more,
and that's Fresh Connect, no dash in between. Freshconnect.app.
Yes. Or you can also download our app and just try it for free from Google Play or App Store.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much.